The storm came in fast. What seemed like a day of rather mild weather had taken a dire turn as night falls around you. You had been out in the village nearby to gather some supplies before winter arrived in full, and as such, there should be no such storm yet. It's getting more and more difficult to see, but you've traveled this path many times. However, your hope of getting back to your small mountain cottage before the sun sets seems to have been swept away by the raging winds. You've been walking and walking alone for what feels like hours. Be it the cold, the solitude, or some mix of both, you feel an unease in your heart. But you press on, trying to shake the numbness from your limbs, because, after all, there's nowhere to go but forward. The sun has now fully set, and thanks to this heavy snow, you can see only but a short ways ahead of you. Suddenly, you start to make out a figure in the distance. On the path ahead, there seems to be a young woman. Her beauty is striking, her silken kimono blending seamlessly into the snowy landscape around you, with its collar dangling enticingly around her neck. Her skin is as pale as the kimono itself, but it's common for women in the area to wear such powders on their skin. Her hair blacker than obsidian, but with a beauty unlike anything you have ever seen. The most striking feature of all is her eyes. As you meet her gaze, you feel something come over you, a sensation unlike anything you have ever felt. Her beauty leaves you awestruck. However, amidst that flood of emotion, you feel scared. Something about her eyes leaves you uneasy, but you're unable to move. The woman begins to approach you. Surely she must be cold in this storm, dressed as she is. The gods know you are, yet oddly she moves towards you with this unearthly grace, unimpeded by the raging, icy winds. Your fear intensifies. Now you find yourself face to face, and you can see that the woman is smiling. Your heart begins to race, but it's not for the beauty of this woman. It's this overwhelming sensation of terror that has begun to consume you. There's something sinister in that smile. You're cold, colder now than you've ever known in your life. The woman begins to reach for your face. Her hand, no glove, just pale, exposed flesh, unfazed by the chill winds. You attempt to move your legs, but they do not give. Her hand draws closer, mere inches from your face. You try to bring your hand up in protest, but your hands do not heed your call. It's cold. Ice. Her touch on your cheek shakes you to your very core. She leans in. From her lips breathes a mist of ice. And you no longer feel anything. The woman simply smiles as your vision fades. Soon, nothing. Nothing but the empty cold of death's embrace. Hello and welcome to a new video series about Japanese mythology and folklore. Japan is a country with a long and rich history with a plethora of tales for us to explore. As it's just become December at the time of recording this video, we are officially entering the coldest season here in Japan. In theme with that, I've decided that today we will take a look at one of my favorite monsters, the yokai most commonly known as Yuki-Onna, the Snow Woman. Yuki-Onna is a yokai. Yokai is a word that refers to the majority of Japanese supernatural entities. From demons to ghosts, these creatures are typically malevolent, or at the very least, they are mischievous. However, there are quite a few who are rather friendly and benevolent towards humans. However, Yuki-Onna is most commonly referred to as one of the more malicious of the yokai, though she can occasionally be affectionate towards humans. Her name is very straightforward, with Yuki being the Japanese word for snow and Onna being a word that refers to women. However, there is some regional variation here. For example, in the Niigata prefecture, she is called Yukijuro, which means snow courtesan, while in the Miyazaki prefecture, she is referred to as Yuki Bajo, Bajo being a colloquial term to refer to older women. However, she has significantly more names than this, but for the purposes of this video, we will be simply calling her Yuki-Onna. Yuki-Onna's appearance is fairly consistent across the entire country. Her pale skin and kimono are described as white as the snow around her. Her hair is usually as black as night. Her eyes are almost always piercing upon witnessing them. Despite being an ageless creature, her visual age does seem to vary to some degree based on the story. However, she is always described as an otherworldly beauty. In most legends, Yuki-Onna will only appear during intense snowfall or a blizzard. However, her goals are where we see a lot of regional variation once again, as well as her abilities to a slight degree. Most commonly, she appears before humans that are caught in a snowstorm, and then, after approaching them, breathes her own icy breath upon them. This siphons the energy remaining from their body, all the heat leaves, and she consumes their soul. However, other prefectures do seem to have a bit of variation here. In the Iwate and Miyagi prefectures, for example, while she still desires to consume the souls of humans, she does not need her breath to do it, and she can achieve her aims merely by making eye contact with you. In the Aomori prefecture, which is the northernmost prefecture on the main island Honshu, she is believed to have another goal entirely. Here, she will seek out babies or young children and spirit them away. The concept of being spirited away is a common theme not just in Japanese folklore, but in many legends around the world. Otherworldly beings taking children from their homes, or disappearing without a trace from the garden, vanishing, never to be seen again. The term spirited away, or kamikakushi in Japanese, also appears as one of the titles of a beloved Studio Ghibli film. In English, we simply call this movie Spirited Away. On to the Niigata prefecture. Here, she is known as Yukijuro, the snow courtesan. She has taken a liking to devouring the livers of humans, especially young children. Yokai consuming livers is something that appears occasionally in Japanese folktales and even modern variations of folktales. For example, in the anime Nurarihyon no Mago, an anime about yokai, eating the liver of a still living creature, called Ikigimo, is supposed to grant you special powers. In the Ibaraki and Fukushima prefectures, Yuki-Onna appears as a young woman lost during a snowstorm. She will beckon to you and ask for your assistance, and it is only upon ignoring her that you invoke her wrath. As we can see, there's a lot of regional variation to Yuki-Onna, but generally, she is regarded as a malicious spirit. In terms of artistic depictions, one of the earliest depictions of Yuki-Onna is during the Edo period, also known as the Tokugawa period. Toriyama Sekien, a poet, scholar, and artist, had a tendency towards writing about and depicting different spirits and monsters in his works. Yuki-Onna was included amongst a collection of yokai that were considered to be common knowledge at this time. The collection is called Gazu Hyakiyako, or Illustrated Night Parade of 100 Demons. Though it's worth noting that the 100 demons refers to an uncountable horde rather than a specific number of demons. However, that is just the artistic depictions. In terms of stories, she is mentioned much earlier in history. Earlier on in the Edo period, a man named Chikamatsu Manzaemon created an adaptation of her story for Japanese puppet theater, which he called Yuki-Onna Gomai Hagoita. In this play, Yuki-Onna is the ghost of a woman who died after being deceived. She is reborn as a yokai bent on vengeance. Japanese puppet theater, bunraku, is a tradition that still carries on to this day, though its popularity is waning. The oldest known mention of Yuki-Onna is in the Sogi Shokoku Monogatari from the Muromachi period. Sogi was a poet who preferred long-form poetry. In this story, he recounts a tale of a time that he himself met a Yuki-Onna. He was living in the Echigo province, which is modern-day Niigata prefecture. Oddly enough, in this first recorded mention of her, there is a rather large discrepancy in her appearance. While the kimono and skin are still as pale as snow, her hair too is described as bone white. This is different from more recent stories, which typically have her with a dark black hair. Sogi's story is that one day he went out of his house on a snowy morning and saw a beautiful but strange woman standing in his frozen garden. She was larger than a normal human, with skin whiter than should be possible, and her face was young and beautiful. Her hair matched her skin and hung loosely. Her kimono too was white like the snow around her, and appeared to be translucent, made of some otherworldly material. When Sogi tried to speak to her, she vanished. Sogi would discuss this encounter with his friends in the region, and his friends would inform him that she was a Yuki no Seirei, a spirit of the snow. A spirit that only appeared during blizzards and heavy snowfalls. As time passed, many more accounts and tales of Yuki-Onna by this name or her countless others would be told and shared around Japan. In 1904, a book was written called the Kwaidan. This book was actually written in English at first, which is why its title uses an archaic transliteration, and in modern times we would translate this as Kaidan. This book is a collection of short stories from a man named Lafcadio Hearn, who wanted to bring Japanese culture and stories to the West. Regarding Yuki-Onna, Hearn claims to have heard this account from a local farmer during his time in Japan, although this cannot be verified. In Hearn's account, two woodcutters named Mosaku and Minokichi lived in the Musashi province of Japan. The Musashi province is modern-day Tokyo as well as parts of Saitama and Kanagawa. One snowy evening, after a long day's work, the men were attempting to return home when a massive snowstorm struck. They were forced to take shelter in a nearby ferryman's hut until the storm had passed. During the night, Minokichi was awoken by the sensation of snow hitting his face. The door had flung open and a woman in white had barged into their shelter. However, he found her to be captivatingly beautiful. But her eyes filled him with terror. She breathed a snowy white mist over Mosaku, the older of the two men, and then turned towards the younger Minokichi. But the woman felt pity for Minokichi, because he was young and handsome, so she made a deal with him. She let him live, provided that he never tell anyone at all about what had transpired on that day. And Minokichi, although shaken by the event, decided to keep his word. The following year, Minokichi met a beautiful young woman named Oyuki. The two fell in love, and with some effort, Minokichi's mother approved and the two became married. Oyuki and Minokichi had 10 children in total over their years together. One day, Oyuki was sewing, and the way that the light had reflected upon her reminded Minokichi of the day that he met the woman in the snowstorm. And so he decided that after this long marriage, it was time to tell Oyuki about that time. But Oyuki flew into a fit of rage and proclaimed that it was her. She was the Yuki-Onna from that day. Her rage was enough to kill him on its own, but she did not. She looked at Minokichi and she told him that those children are the only reason that she does not slay him on the spot. Now he had to swear a new deal. He would take care of these children to the best of his ability. Should they have a complaint about him even once, she would take his life. And with that, she left, disappearing into the snowy landscape once more. Heron's tale of Yuki-Onna has quite a few differences from the older tales about Yuki-Onna. While relationships between humans and non-humans is fairly common in folk tales, the biggest difference in this story is her empathy. Typically, Yuki-Onna is, forgive the joke, rather cold, but here she chooses to let the children have their father, rather than be orphaned. And I think that Yuki-Onna is a representation of something far more deadly with zero empathy. Humans tend to attribute human-like qualities to concepts that make it easier to cope with the harshness of reality. Many tales of monsters and fiends all over the world are based on real, natural occurrences. In the old days, it was hard for humans to comprehend and describe these occurrences. In the case of Yuki-Onna, I believe that she is the personification of hypothermia, death by freezing. This video by no means covers every account or tale of Yuki-Onna. There are countless historical tales as well as many recent tales, as she is a rather prolific and popular yokai. If you are interested, the previously mentioned book, Kwaidan, has a movie of the same name from the 1960s. It is an anthology horror film of Japanese ghost stories, one of which is about Yuki-Onna. She is also a reoccurring primary character in the anime Nurarihon no Mago, an anime that, while admittedly is geared towards a middle school age demographic, is amusing all the same, and is about yokai. Going forward, I plan to release a video every 2 weeks on my current schedule. However, there is a chance that I will increase the frequency in the future, especially if this channel grows in popularity. I will be covering many topics in Japan, though this series will be covering primarily myths and folklore and religion to a lesser extent, as there is a bit of overlap there with the Shinto religion. I have many history videos I'd like to make as well, though they will be released independent of the folklore series, so I'm not sure on a specific release date for any of those, though I have one in mind that I want to make relatively soon. I'm new here on YouTube, so if you enjoyed this video, please, by all means, like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more, and please share it with your friends if you think this is a topic that they'd be interested in. I'm really excited to make more videos, and I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you next time.